Britain's AstraZeneca and Russia's Gamaleya have signed an agreement to cooperate in the fight against coronavirus. Joint clinical trials, well, they're set to start just days from now. And RT's Igor Zhdanov was in the studio a little earlier explaining the significance of the tie-up to Jacqueline Vuka.
A Russian research institute, Gamaleya, and a British pharmaceutical giant, AstraZeneca, they have decided to join their forces in making this new vaccine against the coronavirus more effective. They have signed an agreement, a so-called memorandum, and they are set to begin joint clinical trials very, very shortly. Basically, they will be trying to marry the two different formulas and to make the jab as efficient as possible. Have a listen to how the CEO of AstraZeneca put what was achieved today.
We have two main goals. The first one is to allow healthcare professionals to use one vaccine or the other for the first injection. And the second goal is to hopefully get better efficacy when you combine two different vaccines. I don't think companies are competing against each other. Everybody is racing against the virus. We will need many, many vaccines because there is no one single company that can produce enough vaccine for the entire world.
It's about making the vaccine as reliable as possible, because right now AstraZeneca's efficacy stands at around 70%. It's a good number, but again, it could be much, much better. The producers of the Russian vaccine, Sputnik V, are placing its efficacy at around 90 to 95%. And such international cooperation has been promoted and pushed for by the Russian President Vladimir Putin himself.
I am glad to congratulate you on this significant event, signing the Memorandum of Cooperation. I'm convinced that this commitment to partnership can serve as a compelling example of how science and technology combine to protect the lives and safety of millions of people.
What about when it comes to this new highly infectious coronavirus strain that we're hearing about? How confident can we be that the vaccines that we have will work against it?
The thing to understand about this particular coronavirus, the type of this infection, it's a so-called RNA infection, RNA virus. And these viruses, they mutate very rapidly. So essentially, there could be dozens of different variations of this COVID-19 virus. But I should say, this is something that any vaccine producer, any scientist will keep in the equation, because it doesn't make any sense to make a vaccine against only one particular strain of the virus, because which is one strain of the virus now, say 6 months from now on, it could mutate and develop some different traits. So this is something that the producers of the vaccine, again, which it's something what they keep in mind.
This mutation makes cooperation with AstraZeneca and other producers particularly important, because we just need to work together, and international cooperation, not competition. Our scientists believe that Sputnik V is efficient against the strain, just as it was efficient against other mutations that we've seen before. We offered this to AstraZeneca. We believe that it will lead to higher efficacy of AstraZeneca vaccine if they use this approach. But again, it still needs to be tested, and we will do this in the upcoming several months.
Now, when it comes to these two vaccines that we have at this point, it hasn't exactly been smooth sailing for them, has it?
Well, absolutely. AstraZeneca's vaccine, it has faced its own share of criticism, but it has been centered around its average efficacy of 70%. Essentially, the company behind the vaccine, AstraZeneca, has been criticized for not being transparent when releasing information about how they tested this vaccine. Because essentially they said that, well, a full dose was less efficient than a half dose. And it didn't make any sense, because it has to be more effective than half the dose. And then it turned out it proves to be less efficient among the elderly people. And that was something omitted in the initial press report by AstraZeneca. When it comes to Sputnik V, it has also been criticized. People have been pointing out and claiming that it didn't go through all the necessary phases of testing before going to the market. But the scientists behind Sputnik V, they have addressed this criticism.
People who've been critical, sometimes they're just critical because they don't know all of the facts and all of the information. Sometimes they're critical on purpose, for competitive reasons, for geopolitical reasons. What we've seen is that step by step, there is just less possible arguments by the critics. So first of all, they said, or vaccine maybe have been stolen. Well, it's clear it has not, because it's very different from others. Frankly, we believe it's better in many ways than others. Then there was criticism, what about phase 3? And we've seen that other vaccine manufacturers also registered their vaccine on emergency use basis, just as Russia did, before all of the phase 3 are completed. Then there were questions about efficacy. Well, we demonstrated efficacy more than 90% on 22,746 people who participated in clinical trials, and definitely safety of the approach that has been tested for decades.
Both AstraZeneca and the Russians, they have put their cards on the table, and now basically independent people, can objectively look and study both vaccines and put all the marketing, all the politics aside, and just genuinely make the jab better.
Well, among the reaction we've been getting to developments was from Professor Paul Hunter from the Norwich Medical School in the UK, who explained to us why mixing the two vaccines could dramatically boost their efficacy.
Now, one of the problems with the adenovirus vaccines like the Sputnik 5 and the Oxford is that there's always a risk that you can develop immunity to the carrier rather than to the target, which is what you are wanting for. Now, if you actually mix these two vaccines, so that you maybe give one vaccine to start and then the other one 3-4 weeks later, then you get over this problem of developing immunity to the carrier virus. And I think there's quite a lot of evidence that actually does work like that, and people have shown this works in other areas. So to me, the combination of the Sputnik and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine could well improve its efficacy a lot greater than the individual vaccines apart.